Yes, sir.
Oh, one sec, Mr. Clerk. I can't hear you. Could you say something, Mr. Clerk, please?
We do have quorum if from coming in now.
Yeah, I can hear you now. That's good. Thank you. All right, it's Mr. Clerk, it's 7 p.m. I'm going to call this general committee meeting to order. Procedural notes, Council, as the province has initiated us to be into a modified stage 2, we are going to take some precautions, and so while we are in a modified stage 2, we will not be having an in-person council meeting for this month. It will be virtual, similar to GC, and until the province makes some changes, then we will go back to having those council meetings in person. So we will wait to see what the province does. Just want to let everyone know that's how we'll be moving forward while we are in this modified stage 2. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the added, I believe we have an added delegation. Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? Seeing none. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No community presentations, delegations. As we mentioned, we have 2. First up, we have Nick Kinsella. I hope I said that right. If not, I apologize. And Danielle and Jacob Stewart regarding item 8.5 heritage permit application for 31 Catherine Avenue. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The delegates have just entered the meeting, and we'll ask them to share their screen and start with their delegation.
And Danielle and Jacob Stewart regarding item 8.5 heritage permit application for 31 Catherine Avenue. Mr. Clerk. Jacob, how are you, Jacob? I think we got a little bit of a
share their screen and start with their delegation.
Danielle and Jacob Stewart regarding item 8.5 heritage permit application for 31 Catherine Avenue. Nick, how are you?
Hi, morning. Sorry, or evening. Sorry, I couldn't hear anything. I wasn't sure if I had anything working.
Yeah. So you have 5 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Are we ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, we're getting some feedback. And Jacob, I believe it's you, Jacob. If I could put you on mute, Jacob, for now. There we go. Nick, you can go ahead now.
Oh, okay. Good evening. This is for 31 Catherine Avenue. We have a 1.5-story Victorian influence dwelling, 1 block east of Yonge Street in the Heritage Zone. Are you ready?
Someone's still going.
I believe it's you, Jacob. If I could put you on.
I was.
Is it me?
No, I just put him back on mute. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. Sorry, I'll start again. Excuse me, we're here for 31 Catherine Avenue. We have a 1.5-story Victorian influence dwelling, 1 block east of Yonge in the Heritage Zone. It's 16.76 meters by 47.2 meter lot, which you can see on the slides that Jacobs has on the screen. The lot area of 8,515 square feet, a first floor area of 1,067 square feet, and a second floor area of 1,067 square feet. As you can see in the pic, there is an old single car garage in disrepair at the north side of the building, the gray garage at the rear, and a small mudroom, you can't see it from the photo, that is quickly added years ago that since needs repair. The front of the house has some Victorian influences, i.e. some symmetrical windows on the second floor, a slope roof line, small single-story bay window, a front wraparound porch with columns. As you can see on the picture, you can see the new addition on the left. So what we have now is the new addition, which is first floor of 744 square feet, including the garage, and a second floor addition of 439 square feet. The homeowner and I have made a well-planned and budget-conscious addition with a small garage addition to match the existing roof line, with a master bedroom on the second floor due to a new baby on the way, which actually is now, it was born a couple days ago. So we're right into that. Now, Jacob's going to show you a few slides. The homeowner and I have made a well-planned and budget-conscious addition with a small garage addition to match the existing roof line.
Jacob, if you can hear me, you need to mute your YouTube feed. Otherwise, you're going to get the feedback.
I'm so sorry. That's what it was. It was on YouTube. You're right. My bad.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
So Jacob,
Sorry, Nick. I know I didn't follow along with you. I was getting on this counter. I was like, where is it coming from?
well, I heard my voice. I heard it was like you're recording it. I wasn't sure what was going on.
Oh, terrible. So sorry, everyone.
No problem.
I hope everybody else heard it without the echo that I got the whole time. Yeah, so just to sort of familiarize yourself with the property, this is looking southeast, a little bit of detail between the properties. Now looking southwest, and I'd say this is probably the more important views to take close attention to. Looking at the focus of sort of the garage and what you could see, envisioning what the facing west from my neighbor's property into the what will be the, you see a little bit of the brick there, and then the current garage that exists. Now a little bit more in depth, so focusing in on, here's the existing garage, looking northeast, just again to familiarize yourself with what the property looks like. I hope everybody is on Zoom as well and following along with the presentation. Now this is looking from my neighbor's property just to the east of me and facing southwest and facing west. So this is the garage here and the current house. And then again, looking a little bit southwest. And then from the rear of the house, current garage, and then the actual main house itself. But this is also to give you context of how far back the current garage goes. And then just for more context, west side elevation, love our house, it's beautiful. This was an initial concept that my wife actually did. And a little bit overbearing addition. So we reduced the size, kept the pitch consistent, made the roofs match up in the rear, and then added the trim around the garage for aesthetics. And then I think this is where I'll hand it back over to Nick to drill in a bit more.
Okay. So as you can see, we moved the garage back as to not impede on the front elevation and to keep the elevation clean. We added siding in lieu of having 3 different brick colors on the front elevation. Also the length of the new garage, if Jacob, you can show slide 15 and 16.
I'm there now.
There you are, okay.
Yeah.
So as you can see, also the length of the new garage is shorter than the existing length with the old garage to be removed. So in retrospect, we basically confirmed or conformed with the heritage requirements, except our only exception that the garage is this garage issue, which it's at the rear, so it shouldn't set any precedents and not be very noticeable from the street. We trust the committee will agree with this and find that this is acceptable to the Heritage Committee and allow us to move forward with this addition. And Jacob has another plan showing the site plan, which you can see the difference in the depths. The blue being the existing. Let me see that one again.
So on
With the addition.
So, gentlemen, just to let you know, 5 minutes has passed, but I'm going to give you guys an extra minute because we had a bit of a mix-up.
Oh.
So continue.
Okay, you want to
technology issue.
explain this
Gotcha.
last one, Jacob? If you can explain.
Yeah. Yeah, we're basically we're 2.42 meters shorter, and I know this is understandably a detached versus now proposed addition of being attached. And then yeah, I would echo all the same points that Nick mentioned in summary, as far as, you know, one, the extra addition, or sorry, the rear garage part, small mass, it's not visible. It's limited view from the passerbys on the street.
Mhm.
The overall depth is less than the existing garage by 2.4 meters or 8 foot. And, you know, every house, end of the day, it's different around there. This area in particular, we love the you know, community and space that we exist around. And then application individually, it came up in the last heritage meeting, right, about precedence and making the exception. But there is no precedence from what I understand. And especially in a case like this, where it's super subtle and subdued. And so, you know, looking at our past record, conformed to all of the previous requests, you know, looking at the district plan and keeping up with sort of the look and feel with the house and keeping it in conformity, and just looking for this really one exception to make it through.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. First, council, can I get a motion to receive and refer? Moved by Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Gallo. Comments, questions, actually questions for the delegate? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jacob or Nick. The existing garage that's there, that's being torn down now, is it currently a 2-car garage?
Nick?
I would
Yeah.
say, sorry, I think, is it a 2-car garage
Yep.
or 1.5? I thought it
It's
was
2-car, yeah.
2-car? Okay.
Councillor?
Thank you. And do you have any issues with the neighbors that are surrounding that? Have you talked to the neighbors
Yeah.
about the addition that you're putting on?
Yeah, socialize with all of them and no contentions whatsoever. Both my neighbor to the east, where I took the shots in his backyard, along with and in fact, he's an advocate for it because he likes it sort of be of a natural fence to the east.
Views, yeah.
And you're giving him the privacy as well. And then everybody else I've shared, you know, plans with and gone through the sort of front.
You freeze up?
Yeah, I think he froze up.
Oh, sorry.
All I heard was natural fence, and
Oh.
and then I lost you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, natural privacy fence and shared elevations with other neighbors between the Bickmores and Donaldsons, et cetera, to then get their perspective of the front elevation and street view. And all were very excited to see it start.
Okay,
Counselor?
thank you. Thank you. And through your, were there any concerns at all? Like you're saying, there's a lot of positives, and that's great, but was there
Right.
any exceptions?
Can you turn the light off for me?
Which one?
The only one was the neighbor to the east, about making sure the fence was sort of perpetuated to then, if you saw that one, I'll bring it up. I hope you can hear me and see my screen. Looking southwest at the elevation here. So the only part was just about making sure this fence gets repaired ultimately, right? Because there's going to be construction around it.
Okay, and that request has been satisfied within your plan?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to you guys as well. You mentioned there's no precedence, and I just kind of want to ask how, because you are kind of going outside the parameters a bit. So are you suggesting that Like, I'm just a little confused, like nobody there has done it or somebody there has done it.
Oh, yeah,
Are you the first people to do it? Like, I'm just a little confused by that statement.
oh, sorry. Yeah, so the 16.8 meter maximum of the district plan is what we're the Carlson, the heritage planner, in the last meeting was they were worried about setting a precedence of another house coming along and asking for extra 2.5 meters or whatever it's 2.42 meters, right?
Length, yeah.
But the methodology that the heritage team or the heritage planning committee takes is that every case is individual. So although we may be granted the authority, right, to then build for the extra 2.42 meters, in this scenario, right, is that in another couple, an individual may be coming along for an addition and ask for, you know, using us as an example, but it's all about the context, right? That based upon the scenario, maybe it's more exposed in that case, or they're looking to put a second story. It's all very individual to phrasing.
Jacob, I'm losing you.
Regardless.
Jacob.
Send it again.
Froze up your
Yeah.
last couple sentences.
It's
Frozen again.
looking at other context, right? Like around what's the surroundings to say if it was appropriate or not. And so precedence being on an individual basis, right? Or that they're every application is treated on an individual basis. And although we may get approved, it doesn't set precedence for others because it's all about, like in our case, we have in our favor the limited, you know, the street view, low mass, is less than current garage, right? All those things taking into consideration would have to be perpetuated to the other property, say if they wanted a longer garage or a longer addition in the back, right?
Thank you. You cut out quite a bit, but I did catch a little bit. So
Okay,
are you
sorry.
saying that your current footprint of your garage that you're putting on now or the addition is taking up less of a footprint than the garage you're taking down?
Jacob?
In overall depth, yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the delegate? Seeing none. Gentlemen, thank you.
Hey,
Council-
thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we have Rebecca Beaton in regards to road reconstruction on Holman, Johnson, and Browning. Beaton.
Good evening.
Good evening, Rebecca. You have 5 minutes. Floor is yours.
I would like to ask if council is in agreement that agenda item 8.5 be brought forward while the delegates are here. And if you wish to discuss it, I'd be fine for waiting.
No, Rebecca, we'll do that procedurally as we get to consideration of items requiring separate discussion.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay. I'm delegating this evening with regards to the road construction that's currently ongoing on Holman, Johnson, Browning, and Baldwin. We were advised late on Friday, October the 16th, that we were not to use our driveways, and that effective on Monday, October 19th, for 72 hours, we were to park on Glass and Child. Will the town waive all parking tickets for residents who have parked on those streets with regards to this construction?
Ms. Beaton, we'll ask staff of that and possibly under new business, but we'll get those answers for you.
Okay, so I cannot get the answers then during the presentation, during my delegation?
No, delegation is just you delegate to council and then council has an opportunity to ask any questions after your delegation to you, not to.
Okay. Okay. Why did the town not allow and authorize parking permits for the residents to be able to park at Confederation Park overnight, which, as you know, after 11 o'clock is against the bylaw? My third question is, at the October 2019 meeting with staff at the town hall to go over this construction project, residents asked repeatedly whether the grade of the roadway would be changed, and they were repeatedly told no. The grading was in fact changed and is now, for some residents, created a steep slant of 1 to 2 inches at the end of their driveways. Will the town be making repairs to these driveways so that there is a gentle slope from the driveway to the road once this project is finished? My fourth question, according to the town, this project is due to be completed by the end of October. And with less than 2 weeks remaining, the curbs, road paving, and landscaping have not been completed. And will this project be completed on time? My fifth question, several residents have notified your legal department of damages caused as a result of this road construction and have not received an acknowledgement or correspondence regarding their claims. At least one claim goes back to June. What other department should residents be notifying the town of such claims? My sixth question is, several residents also have damage to the homeowner's portion of the driveway. And again, what department should they be contacting for repairs to the damage? Number 7 on my questions is construction took place on front lawns, far exceeding the drip line and for trees that were planted on the homeowner's property, and in some cases up to the base of trunks of trees. Will the town be maintaining, with the owner's permission and consent, those trees, hedges, and plantings that have been damaged via their root system? And will the town accept full and complete liability for the trees which may not survive and may require servicing and be cut down? That is the end of my question, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Beaton. Council, can I get a motion to receive? Councillor Humphries, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Questions for the delegate? Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Beaton, for delegating this evening. All your questions are very valid and important. At this point of the meeting, we won't be able to actually address them, but under new business, we'll make sure that we ask staff to gather that information back, so it provides clarity as to your questions and concerns. And in terms of your parking, your very first question about parking, again, will be raised under new business. I'd like to do that for the residents there, so, and yourself. Thank you. Thank you for delegating.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the delegate? Councillor Garner, did you have your hand up, or did I?
I didn't have my hand up, but just to clarify, these questions are going to be answered under new business? I wasn't clear what we were doing.
Staff under new business, that's our process, right? I mean, or we can just, obviously one of our staff members will, I'm sure Mr. Waters or Anka, we can get Anka to respond to those questions to Ms. Beaton personally, but we can ask them under new business. We don't normally have questions to staff during delegations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that. There's a lot of questions here. I'm just wondering, staff will be able to answer all of them at this during new business?
I'm sure they'll do their best to answer every single one of them.
Thank you. And if Ms. Beaton doesn't want to stay tuned, they could also be in touch with her.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the delegate? No? Ms. Beaton, thank you very much for coming and delegating. And as Councillor Humphries and Councillor Gardner mentioned, we will definitely get answers for you to those questions, 7 questions.
Okay, if I could have them under new business, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Council, call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, no consent agenda, no advisory committee meeting minutes, items requiring a discussion. Did someone want to move 8.5 forward? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Humphries. So we'll start with 8.5. 8.5, Heritage Permit Application for 31 Catherine Avenue. Resolution 1, that report number PDS 20-062 be received. 2, that Heritage Permit Application HPA 2020-10 to permit the demolition of an existing detached garage and construction of a new addition at 31 Catherine Avenue be approved, subject to the elimination of the 1-story extension at the rear of the proposed addition. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Humphries, second by Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? Councillor Gallo.
I'm not sure who, but which councillor, but could councillors that sit on the Heritage Advisory Committee just give us a sense of the discussion that took place, please?
Absolutely. Councillor Humphries?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So this did come to Heritage last month, actually, yeah, September meeting. And overall, we approved the construction of the new garage. The feedback from the committee was that, it does align to the look of the Heritage home and area. A little bit of a concern about the length of the garage. But that will be, I think, addressed through site plans and so on. But from a heritage perspective, we were fine with it.
Councillor Gallo?
So, I mean, there's some notes in the report, but so did the committee voted to approve this?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's all, Councillor Gallo? Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The staff report that went to the Heritage Advisory Committee, I had a look at it. It's basically the concerns that were expressed then are being expressed now in this report by staff. Primarily, it's not the front elevation and the street view that's an issue. It's that in the Heritage District, this depth is not allowed.
Right.
And it's not just a matter of a few feet. I think it's 17 or 18 feet deeper than is allowed in the Heritage District. So I agree with staff. It's, what we're talking about here is preserving the cultural value of the Heritage District. And this, to form the district plan was a huge exercise. Many experts got together and put the plans in place. And the plans are in place for a reason. And this is an outlier. And it shouldn't be permitted.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Humphries, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure that I'm accurate because I was looking at the last minutes and I actually consulted. Is Mr. Waters here or Carlson?
Mr. Waters is here.
I just want confirmation that through the Heritage Committee meeting, that from a heritage perspective, I believe we were okay, but the overall like size is the issue.
Mr. Waters?
Did I get that wrong? Is that incorrect? Would you mind, because I'm just trying to find my notes here and I had a problem with that this morning too. So if you could just, wouldn't mind validating.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that there was general consensus that the addition or the garage, was acceptable, but that there was an issue regarding conformity with the district plan, and that it exceeded the 16.8 meter depth. Which is, my understanding is why the committee did not accept it.
Councillor?
Sorry, the committee did not accept it?
Mr. Waters?
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Councillor.
then my apologies then. I was, because the town report, my apologies, guys. You're right, because I thought the committee overall liked design, but you're right, the conformity did, as Councillor Gartner mentions. So it did say, does in accordance, and then doesn't bylaw be brought before council for adoption if no objections are received within 30-day period. So it looks like we were not, oh gosh, sorry. Mr. Mayor, give me a second. I'm having a hard time with my notes.
All right.
I don't want to mislead anybody. So just.
Absolutely. I'll go back. If we can just confirm whether the Heritage Committee or deny it. But in the meantime, does anyone else have any comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From the notes, the kind of connotation and the feeling that I got from the notes, and forgive me if I'm wrong, is that the committee agreed with it, but had also noted that it didn't conform the length, but it didn't really seem to give me the feeling that they were completely opposed to it by the language that was used. It's just really more a process within the numbers. I agree with Councillor Gartner about the district and the plan. Although seeing the plan as well and just taking consideration kind of a case by case, if this owner was to, have this addition and put a huge garage in the backyard, which would be in the right way in that area, you're actually probably taking up more space. I think they've done a really good job with trying to make the street view nice and not very in your face, and they've done really good attention to detail. And I really wouldn't want to discredit the fact that they've really done a good job at trying to make sure that they did conform it the best that they could in working with the neighbors. They don't seem to have a problem with any of the surrounding neighbors whatsoever. And I think one of the benefits is that they do kind of gain a lot more of their backyard back. And so the neighbors would actually see more of the backyard as opposed to looking at a garage at the very back of the property. So there are some pros and cons to that. And also important to note that they did have a 2-car garage, and they're trying to, I guess, incorporate 2-car garage more attached now. So it's like, which one is it going to be? Is it going to be, well, you can't have a garage that's built unless it's detached at the back? Is that what we're saying? Or are we going to allow some sort of, I guess, as per basis, and whether or not they conform? They seem to check a lot of boxes that the committee was happy with the exception of this one small, I guess, procedural number. I think they've done a good job. I think they had some good consideration. I don't know if there was any other feedback that was given about the context or the massing. If maybe Mr. Waters or Councillor Humphreys can speak to that. But from what I understand, their revisions coming back and forth seem to kind of match the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe Councillor Humphreys would like to say something.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So I just thank you. I found some note. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. So it's exactly what happened. We, overall, the Heritage Committee, they liked the changes. They thought that it was a little more, aesthetically accurate than what's there today. But it was the size, and what the recommendation is is it's recommended that proposal be amended to eliminate the one-story extension at the rear in order to achieve the footprint that's more in scale with the historic pattern of the heritage building. So that's what needed to be done in order to provide the scaling so the garage can be placed, but there's a one-story extension that needs to be removed. So this is sort of why we were sort of, the committee like overall thought it was okay, but in order for the sizing of this actual addition or change to the garage, if you look at the very last statement in the conclusion of the report, they've incorporated various measures in the design of the proposed addition to reduce the impact on the Reynolds house and the streetscape character, but staff are concerned that the proposed building depth is excessive within the context of the neighborhood of the host there. So it's recommended that the proposal be amended to eliminate the one-story extension at the rear in order to achieve the footprint. That's it, more at scale. So that's where we were, again, struggling in order to remove that one-story addition. That would be our recommendation. So that's sort of in the conclusion of the report, and I believe that's what we're voting for today. So the report is very accurate in terms of what Heritage the Hack wanted and what we're asking the applicant to do. I'm not sure the applicant wants to do that, but that's what we're recommending.
Councilor Gilliland?
Thank you. And so, like, I guess my comment to that, and just looking at the plan and seeing how it's taking up less of the depth of the backspace, I can see that difference between where the garage was and where it is now. And by asking to do what they're going to do means they can't have a 2-car garage, because really you're asking them to eliminate a parking spot. So they're tearing down a 2-car garage so they can place it somewhere else on their property, try and make it fit in as best as they can and conform and make it look beautiful. But if we're going to say no and they're not going to be able to do it, then we're essentially saying, nope, put your 2-car garage in the back property again, because that's the only way they're going to get 2-car garage. So it's just a matter of kind of deciding, like, is this something that's really taking away from the what we're trying to protect in the heritage and the culture? Is this something that's really, is this something that is specific, that is an outlier? Like, I think this is the conversation we have to have, or are we sending this guy to the committee adjustment? I don't know what the process is. Just looking at the plan and what they're proposing, I think it looks nice. I think they've done a great job. I wouldn't want to refuse something that looks like good architecture and a good bit at what they were trying to achieve. Otherwise, we're telling them to say, if you want a 2-car garage, put it at the back of your property. And I just don't know if that is what the planning is suggesting that they do to have or achieve a 2-car garage, or if the Heritage Committee is suggesting in order to achieve a 2-car garage that that's what you need to do. Mr. Waters, maybe you could tell me if, say, they did a design to where they had a carport at the front half, and then they did, an upper tier living space, and then had a 1-car garage in the back somehow, would that still be part of a footprint? Is that really the issue here, the footprint, or is it just the length of the back that exceeds the house?
Mr. Waters?
Through Mr. Chair, this is a case of where the district plan is being interpreted literally. And I think, every application should be considered on its own merits, and given its circumstances of where it sits, it's the depth of the lot, the amount of landscaping, view from the public road. So interpreting this permit literally, it does not satisfy the policy or the guidelines of the plan, which would basically require the about 20 feet to be chopped off the 1-story addition. So you would pull it back up to the rear wall of the house, right? And then you would still be able to do 1 parking spot, but you would not be able to do the tandem spot or the 2 spots that they're proposing to do.
Councillor?
Are there any other situations within this district that have gone outside of the policy parameters? Not necessarily a garage or specific to what we are discussing today, but just overall in general.
Oh,
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In my time at the town. I am not aware of anything like this where it's exceeded some of the guidelines of the plan.
Counselor?
I see Councillor Humphreys. She may want to chime in. I know she's been on the committee and has maybe across some different files that I'm not aware of, or Mr. Waters.
I just, through Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry. I think I made this more complicated than it is. I think the report is bang on. I don't think the applicant is asking for anything different. I have to apologize. I had a bunch of notes and I was really concerned about the conversation we had during the meeting. But I do believe that what's happening is, at the end of the day, staff have no concern with the applicant's proposal to demolish the existing garage at the rear because the structure does not contribute to the heritage value of the property. And I believe that they are going to eliminate that building and set up another 2-story that will conform in addition. So I don't think we need to worry too much about, I think that the recommendations here are fine with the staff, and I think we're good. I really don't think I think I made it into worse. I'm sorry, guys. I think I made it worse for everyone to be concerned. So I think the elimination of the building is going to happen. I don't think they said that they weren't going to do that.
The approval in front of us is for the demolition of the existing detached garage
Right.
and construction of the new addition be approved subject to the elimination of the 1-story extension. That is what's on the floor.
Right, and I think that's fine with the owners. So I apologize. I made it very confusing for no reason at all.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Councillor Gillard?
Okay, thank you. So what you're saying is the 1-story tandem garage. What we're saying is that the current homeowners are okay. No, I think this is staff recommendation is to remove the tandem garage space, if I'm correct, and that the actual homeowners want to have the tandem garage space. Is that not correct?
Mr. Waters, this is a staff recommendation, and do the homeowners agree with the staff recommendation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, they don't. They are looking for the garage to be a tandem garage for 2 cars and to extend beyond the rear wall of the dwelling that's there today.
Thank you. Councillor Gillard?
Thank you. So, I mean, I guess what my challenge is that, they've got a 2-car garage in the back of their property and they're trying to tear that down and incorporate more of a detached look and still have 2-car parking garage. And right now it seems to me, based on the literal policies and the way that it's been written for that area, is that there's absolutely no way for them to have a 2-car garage of any sorts if it's attached to the house, unless it's set back in the back of their property. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Waters, but is there any other kind of, other than allowing this to move forward and giving that tandem parking spot, is there not any other way to maintain a 2-car garage without this exception?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's to keep the existing garage without demolishing it. I mean, they have that at the moment, and it does extend beyond the rear wall of the dwelling. Because they're making this change, what takes effect is basically the plan and its guidelines. Like, they have basically a legal non-conforming situation here with the garage. So once they decide to make changes, then we apply the district plan guidelines, and it results in the garage extending beyond the 16.8 meter guideline.
Councillor?
So I guess it's kind of like there's two different evils. It's either you have a huge garage in the back corner of your property where all your neighbors can look at, or you tear that down, you build something new and conform and make it look nice and put together. You hide it as much as you can, as best you can, and have a bunch of happy neighbors. And yet you're still not meeting those provisions based on a little bit of length. And it's a matter of, is that something that we say in this specific situation, we're okay with that? I don't know if this has ever been done before, so I really don't know what to decide, but I certainly would be open to the conversation more. I guess the question I would have to you, Mr. Waters, would this same thing apply if, say, they had a single car garage attached to the side of the house and the tandem parking was a carport?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's important here to understand that we're not trying to sort of replicate the two-car garage, the two parking spaces. It's based on the structure that's being proposed and whether it's for a garage or whether it's for a living space. That's the question that's before us. In terms of a carport, that is a structure. And again, if it does exceed the guideline, then, it's in a non-compliant state.
Counselor?
So the carport would still fall under the same thing as if it was a fully built-in covered garage. Building footprint would be equal to a carport that was open?
I believe so, because through you, Mr. Chair, because it is a structure and requires a building permit.
Counselor?
Okay, well, these are the policies that we've put in place, and if we approve this recommendation from staff tonight, does that mean that the homeowners do have the option of going to a committee of adjustment at all, or if they want to continue with this, or does that mean that they have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to get two-car parking a different way?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they have the ability to appeal the council's refusal of the permit to LPAT.
Counselor?
So they don't go to a community adjustment, they go straight to LPAT then?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The committee of adjustment would be required, or a money rents would be required once this it goes through a zoning review, and if it's flagged in terms of non-compliance with the zoning bylaw, then a variance would be required. But their opportunity to have this development or have this addition approved is now through LPAT if council decides to accept the staff recommendation.
Counselor?
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo. Second time. Oh, actually, Councillor Gallo, can I go with Councillor Kim for the first time before I go to you for a second time? Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to confirm here, just the language of the recommendation that I'm reading, the staff is approving what the applicant has put forth other than 2.5 meter extension at the back, which is essentially the depth. If that is the correct interpretation, based on what I've heard, I would support the applicant in his plan in its entirety. So I would, if it needs an amendment to allow for the extra 2.5 meter depth, that's what I would be in favor of, because it seems like it's all about a legal non-conforming issue because, I think a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, we dealt with something similar on Church Street, where there was a small property on a 50 by 80 or 90 feet. It was an odd shape. It was legal non-conforming. And that applicant as well, brought forward a very great design and architecture. And there were no complaints from adjacent neighbors, and it actually added to the streetscape. And it seems like this is something similar, and we approved that Church Street application a year and a half, 2 years ago. So for me, if it's essentially allowing for an extra 2.5 feet depth, I'd be in support of that.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Anyone else for the first time? Councillor Thompson? No. Councillor Gallo, second time.
Thank you. And just through you to, I guess, staff, what exposure to the community has this had other than the actual owner going to his neighbors?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no public process for a heritage permit application. The only commenting body would be the Heritage Committee.
Counselor?
Thank you. So having said that, we really don't know what the community feels about this other than the community representation on the Heritage Advisory Committee and who's ever watching here tonight. We have not gauged that community to get a sense of, are they okay with it, other than, no disrespect, perhaps a biased view from the owner and his immediate neighbors taking his word for it. And I believe, his immediate neighbors are okay with it, but we don't have a sense of the community and what they feel about this. Also to staff, through you, Mr. Mayor, if they were to rebuild the existing double car garage, would it also not trigger a permit, and they would also have to go through this process because it's currently non-conforming?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they would require a building permit if they were going to redo the garage, but in a legal non-conforming situation, my understanding is that they could build on the existing footprint and replicate what was there.
Okay,
Counselor?
thank you. So the options are, in my view, either probably three options. The staff report removing that one-story garage addition, not allowing any of this, and they can rebuild their garage and have a double car garage, or allowing this to go through. And just to clarify what Councillor Kim said through you again to Mr. Waters, is that the only issue, that 2.42 meters of length that is triggering this? If it was 2.42 meters less, would we be in this situation?
Mr. Waters?
You, Mr. Chair, we're just following the guideline as it's presented in the district plan, which is up 16.8 meters, and the proposed garage does exceed it. So whether it's exceeded by 1 meter or by 10 meters, it exceeds it. So if we interpret the guidelines literally, it should not, it's consistent with our staff recommendation.
Counselor?
So that's a yes. So it's the 2.42 meters that triggered this.
That's correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's how I see it. Those are the options on the table. I probably, my biggest hiccup is that I don't know what the public feels about this in that community, because just because of the process, we haven't gone out to ask them what they feel, if this really is an issue to them or not. To me, I put a lot of value on that, and unfortunately, this process doesn't allow that. I don't think it means that it's impossible for us to do that in some form or another, but that's where I stand.
Thank you, Counselor. I just got a question for Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, before I go to Councillor Gartner for a second time, Mr. Waters, just so I have a full understanding, if we don't make a decision by January 5th, then the demolition would get approved, the permit would get approved, would it not?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. If council makes no decision, then the permit is deemed to be approved by that date.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is frustrating because there's just so many facets to it. With respect to the home on Church, it's not in a heritage district. This is a heritage district that got a lot of public input. A lot of work was done on it. It's something that town wanted to have. And so whether the public agrees with this particular situation or not, there was a consensus on everything that went into the heritage district plan. And what went before the district was in place, I'm sure there's all kinds of non-conforming. But once the plan was in place, and it's clear, it's on our website, It describes additions in this area. And it actually says the town's official plan, and I believe it's section 13, says for additions in the Heritage District, you have to refer to the Heritage District plan. So that's what staff is doing in this report. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters, my understanding that the addition what is proposed exceeds by about 16 or 17 feet. Am I incorrect on that?
Through you,
Ms. Waters?
through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was kind of struggling with that number as well. I didn't know where the two feet came from.
I don't know
But
either.
I had done some, yeah, I thought it was around plus or minus 20 feet
Yes.
approximately,
Thank
based
you.
on my my measurements.
Thank you very much, because that is the note that I have also. It isn't if it was a matter of a couple of feet, perhaps perhaps one, it's a couple of feet. It still doesn't conform, but this is quite a lot of feet, and we have a district plan. The town wanted this, the community wanted this. So I think we have to conform to the directives in the plan. It's not a matter of, change this and change that and look at something outside of the district. We are in a very important district, and it was fought for and approved by Ontario Heritage Trust. So I think that we have to go with the staff report. Is it, the good of the individual, or is it the good of the community, in this case, the Heritage District? And I think that's what we have to go for.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Humphries, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and again, to Councillor Gardner's point, it was voted on at Heritage that we comply to the Heritage District plan. And that's why it was a tough call, because, again, when you look at it, looks okay, but there was some lots of discussion around this, and that's why I was having a tough time gathering my thoughts and looking for my notes. But at the end of the day, it's just complying to the Heritage District plan, and it was voted in favor through the Heritage plan, to the Heritage Advisory Committee. So again, sorry for some of the confusion earlier, but that's the case. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my only comment is, and I do respect the Heritage plan, the district, and the rules and the parameters set out within therein. I do respect good architecture and people who do hire well-respected architects to do additions that conform and spend the time and the detail to go to this point. And I do believe that it is good for us as a town to also take in consideration that they are trying to conform as much as possible. I do look at this as two shakes of one and the other. So either you're exceeding within the length of the very back of your property, 17 feet, or it's attached to your house. So really this becomes really a situation of where is that being attached? And right now it's because it's attached to the house. That is what's making it exceed. So if what we're saying today is that if you want a 2-car garage, you have to do it at the back of your property where your existing garage is, and that's the way a district plan is, then so be it. But really, we're not taking away any more space from the back of the property. It's just where that space is being allocated, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from everybody here in respect to this plan. So I do hope, though, people are open to spending and improving their properties and getting good architecture and try to do those extra details to conform. And yet I don't want us to be so strict and so contingent on some details that we need to decide whether or not it's worth that change or that fight. And if there's something that everybody's passionate about, that's really going to make a huge difference in the context and the character, then I'll support it. I'm on the fence with this one. and this particular specific home.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson? No? Okay, before I call the vote, you know, we do have a heritage district plan. We looked at ones last term. I can specifically point out a couple just to bring it up, to refresh everyone's memory. When we look, I can give you 2 examples on Center Street. One was at the beginning of the term when we dealt with a house that was looking at being built on Center Street, being redeveloped. And it wasn't actually in one of the built forms that was allowed within the district. They're supposed to, through the district plan, they're supposed to choose one of the architectural styles. And some of us fought for that. And we ended up saying you need to pick one of the styles that are within that because that's what our plan states. The other one is Center Street. As we know, there was it ended up going to OMB or LPAT. We fought hard to make sure because they were looking at encroaching into the backyard, pushing up that space. And I'm sure Councillor Gardner, you remember that. Humphreys, Kim Thompson, you remember that. We went to LPAT. We did end up with a better design, one that didn't take up as much as the backyard. Even though it did go to LPAT and we didn't get all that we wanted, it was better than what was originally proposed, and we fought for that. I think that the Heritage District Plan is one that we do need to uphold. You know what? I agree that we want to see these properties, you know, cleaned up, fixed up. We want the homeowners to come in and you know, make them better, make them suitable for them to live in. But at the same time, they have to adhere to the plan. And you know, but at the same time, we need to make a decision though. We need to make our positions known as far as from a heritage perspective and a heritage district perspective, where we stand. And so I'll be in favor of the recommendation. It's what the Heritage Committee decided. I always said that if our Heritage Committee feels that something needs to be designated or they feel very strongly about something, I'll uphold that. Because heritage does matter in our town. And so I'll continue to uphold that. It is within the plan, the Heritage District planned area, which is totally different, as Councillor Gardner mentioned, compared to the south side. South side, we looked at stable neighborhoods, and we created guidelines and for those areas as well, pushing the garages back and this and that. When those come, are we going to just ignore those plans? So I think we need to continue to uphold those plans in this district. Work with the applicant, work with the homeowner. You know, if there's something that we can do to make it that fit within the plan, well then let's move forward that way. But I'll be in favor of the recommendation from staff and from the Heritage Committee. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Well, that carries unanimously. .1. It's 2021 and 2022 fees and charges. The resolution 1, that report number FIN 20-024 be received, and 2, that a bylaw be enacted to set the 2021 and 2022 fees and charges for applications, permits, the use of town property, the sale of documents, and for the prescribed service charges for administrative matters as itemized on the attached schedules. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Kim, second. Councillor Thompson, comments or questions to this report? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. A question on 8.1, the accessibility schedule C. And then I'm not sure who would answer this. An attendance supervisory fee per hour. Could someone explain to me what that is?
Ms. Van Leeuwen, I'm assuming it's you.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So this is for a supervisory fee to attend a property as a peace officer, I believe.
Councillor Gardner.
Or to oversee property maintenance where we have to retain somebody to cut grass. So those are the types of fees.
Counselor?
Thank you, Ms. Van Leeuwen. I never would have been able to guess that from what it's called. I thought this was for somebody to accompany somebody who had accessibility issues. I'd like to go to Schedule C, Schedule E. It's under operational services. I'm gonna, to the tree permit part, I'm gonna go to eScribe for this.
Okay.
So this is something that I have addressed before. Is Mr. Downey on the line?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Mr. Downey.
Good evening.
So going back to the last time we looked at this, I was making a comment at the amount of money we were charging for the tree permit fees. The tree permit fees are in actuality the cost to cut down a tree. And I felt that we really are not charging enough to, in effect, destroy a tree. So I don't know if you've done any work on this. Do you have any idea if we're in the middle of the pack with respect to this? Or do we have any obligation to charge a particular fee? I don't think it's governed by any other Ontario provision.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, we're not obligated to charge any particular fee. However, when staff presented our recent report on urban forestry, that question was identified within the report, and we gave some figures relative to some other municipalities in the region. We provided that information to council, and there was no direction to alter the fees based on the information that was provided. I'd be happy to provide that information to council again, and certainly then council can, if they wish, to bring forward any amendments based on that information. However, we were not directed or asked to make any changes to the fee, but simply provide information based on the fees that we presently charge.
Counselor?
Thank you for clarification. The first one, which is up to 3 trees that are less than 20 cm, is that $214 for all 3 trees or for each tree?
Mr. Downey?
I believe that's $214 for each tree.
Thank you. I would like Aurora to do everything we can to protect trees that exist. I'm particularly looking at the last one, which is a tree that is greater than 20 centimeters, but less than 70. So 70 centimeters is pretty good diameter for a tree. That's a pretty old tree. I guess it depends on the species and how quickly a tree grows, but that is a large tree. And, certainly up towards the 70 centimeter diameter. I don't think that $534 is nearly enough to ask from somebody that wants to destroy such a large and possibly important tree in our tree canopy. So I would like to have a review of this. Mr. Downey, that would be great if you would bring back this particular, as you suggested, you could bring it back from our previous report. I would like to know what other people on council think. It's, to me, it's just not acceptable to charge $500 to cut down a tree that might be 60 to 70 centimeters, 60 to 69 centimeters.
Mr. Downey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I said, we as staff provided that information so that if council wishes us to review those fees, we can certainly provide that information back, but I would prefer to do that either through a motion of council or through a notice of motion, so that we can be sure that we address all the concerns of council.
Thank you, Councillor.
I was afraid you were going to say that, Mr. Downey. You know how much I love doing motions. Okay, well, I'd like to know if there are any other comments from council on that.
I got a couple more speakers, so did you want me to, are you done for now, Councillor Garrett?
I am done for now, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. McDougall, regarding the decrease for the artificial turf, because it's cost prohibitive, and essentially saying that no one wants to rent our artificial turfs because of the cost. Does that? It seems to infer that we have excess capacity. Then does that mean? Are you also saying then that even local users do not want to use the artificial turf, not necessarily because of the cost, because the fees are different, but we do have excess capacity, and that's why we want to bring down the non-Roran use fees?
Ms. McDougall, and just actually, Ms. McDougall, before you answer that, Councillor Kim, just so everyone is clear, that's Schedule D, page 7 of 7?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McDougall?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the fees and the availability of the turf, we are finding in comparison to other municipalities, we're higher. So when there was available time, the preference from some of the user groups was to just stay on the natural turf, just based on price. It wasn't a motivation to go on to the artificial turf. But even when we did have available space, trying to promote and encourage even the non-residents, it was interesting that we were still trying to find a way to sell those time slots. But more importantly, the local groups were finding it higher in comparison to what other municipalities are facing. So we wanted to become more in line with what they were experiencing elsewhere, just as an additional promotion for the use of the turf.
Councillor Kim?
Okay, great. So we're lowering the fees for Aurorans as well as non-Aurorans then.
Sorry, repeat that.
So we're lowering the fees for Aurorans as well as non-Aurorans? Or residents and non-residents?
Sorry, no, to be clear, the fee for the non-residents is not adjusting. The fee for the resident is adjusting. We want to promote within more important to sell that first.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Ms. Van Leeuwen, one of the changes is we're now going to apply a fee for the pickup of deceased animals, both domestic and wildlife. Can you explain the rationale behind that?
So this is an enhanced service. We have never removed wildlife on private property or picked up deceased animals. But because our animal services officers have been more visible in our community and people are becoming more aware of our animal services, they are calling more frequently, requesting this. So we thought that we do have the ability, certification to trap, for example, and we have the skill and knowledge and can provide this service. So we've done a scan of other municipalities and other service providers who provide similar services and costs, and we are on the low side. But it is a cost for service that we've never provided before.
And thank you. And again, through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, in terms of calls or people asking for this service, do we have any data? Because I'm really curious how often we think that we're going to be needed to provide this service.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can certainly provide some data because I know Mr. Ray, he tracks all of these numbers, so we can certainly do that. Like I said, I do know because we have increased visibility in our community that we are receiving more and more calls with respect to these types of services. But I can provide that data. I wouldn't know in the past because we didn't really track it because we never provided the service.
Councillor?
Thank you. I guess to separate the two between wildlife and domestic, when I think of domestic, and again, through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, are we talking about homeowners' pets dogs and cats?
Ms. Van Loen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it could be a variety of domestic pets on the side of the road or on private property or in their homes, and they don't have the ability to remove those, maybe because of some type of mobility issues or things like that. So it could be a variety of reasons.
Thanks. I guess the reason why I'd like some more data is I feel a little uncomfortable charging a fee to pick up somebody's dog or cat. I'm sure it's a very traumatic experience, and to ask them for $20 or $30 to remove their pet, you know, I really don't know if that's the right thing to do. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So I'd like to better understand, you know, how many calls we get. If this is 12 times a year, do we really need the $300? I mean, I think that would just provide that service for the homeowners. It's a traumatic event, and let's help them out in that time of need, or at least maybe add a policy whereby you or somebody has the option to waive the fee in certain circumstances for compassionate reasons or otherwise.
Ms. Van Loen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we do actually have a fee exemption policy corporate-wide that has some caps and thresholds on that policy if people are experiencing undue hardships. So we do have that ability. I can certainly pull some numbers together and provide some data.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. To Ms. Van Leeuwen, I guess I got both of my questions answered. One was about the animal bylaws and picking up and such. So I got those questions answered, and about the fees. And I don't know if Councillor Gartner had asked this question. I was cut out there. The officer paid duty, that was also highlighted as well. I'm just trying to understand what that servicing had meant. Does that mean when I call somebody and I need some help from a bylaws officer and I don't know what that means, officer paid duties. Does that mean I'm being charged a fee for coming to my house to check something out? Please explain.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is if we have to hire a contractor to do some property maintenance like cut grass, then we attend and supervise and have oversight of that work being done. And occasionally we will get called in if somebody is going to utilize our access to adjacent property to do maintenance on their own property. We do have that bylaw in place, and they may request that a peace officer attend to supervise. And our bylaw officers are peace officers.
Councillor?
Thank you. Okay. Through you to Mr. Waters, there was, it looked like there was an edit or a crossing out on grading on pool enclosures. It was the security, and it was to the effect of $1,000 to $3,000. It was quite the jump to take a security for a permit fee payment. Could you explain that, Mr. Waters?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Let me just take a look at this. I believe the fee increase was to align it with other municipalities that charge for similar security.
Ms. Gilliland?
So did we have an issue before with the current 1,000? Pool sales are going through the roof. I know that we've had this conversation. I know myself, I had trouble. A lot of people are investing in their properties. You know, do we have problems with this $1,000 to rate? Like, it's just a lot for the average homeowner to shell out $3,000 just as a holding fee for grading. Was there a reason for that we're having issues?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that the main reason for it was that the initial amount hasn't increased over X number of years, and that to bring it in line with what other municipalities are charging for this type of security, that it's been increased.
Councillor?
Okay, well, I don't really see if there was no problem, but it's there. It's not a bone I'm really going to pick. But I personally would like to see the data for the animal pickup. I know that health and safety is probably also something to consider. And if there was, whether it's a raccoon or another dog, I certainly wouldn't want homeowners to fear being charged a fee and maybe, trying to attempt to move it themselves or throw it on town property and calling us. I just don't know. I just would rather separate that part and get a little bit more information about that. I do feel that maybe some of the public would kind of feel like, we have taken animal bylaw under our wing recently. It was a big thing to kind of put together, and it's a service that, I think some homeowners would maybe expect that would be kind of included, especially if it was their own pet. Obviously, there should be some parameters maybe around it if it was somebody who was calling all the time, or I don't know what that would look like. I just don't know if I have enough information to say, yeah, let's implement these fees for that specific section. So I would just prefer to vote separately on that part.
Mr. Clerk, can we just take out one section and vote separate on it? Or do we need an amendment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think an amendment would be more proper in this case. If just an amendment to remove the fee but continue the service or something like along those lines.
Councillor?
I mean, I would just really would like to have some more information before I'm deciding on moving forward. So is there a way of wording it?
Yeah, we're still in GC. So I would suggest that if we can get that information by council, then if we don't get that information by council, then maybe you can look at making an amendment. How's that? Does that work?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Gallo.
Thanks. Just on that animal control services, is this did I understand correctly? It's a new service that we're providing through you, Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We have never provided this service, even with our third-party service provider. It was always up to the responsibility of the pet owner or the homeowner of the private property to have deceased animals removed at their own cost.
Councillor?
And this is below the cost of a third-party service provider.
Councillor?
And we're doing this because we found there was a need, or that we've been asked to be doing it. Just trying to understand why this came about.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we're seeing an increase in requests for this type of service. And as I mentioned, likely because we are far more visible now in the community than we have ever been with respect to animal services, and people are becoming very familiar with the service we provide. And we do have the ability, but there is a cost associated with that.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. I guess my initial thoughts when I read it, and I didn't quite understand it until this discussion. I'm not a big fan of competing with the private sector, because to me, if I have an animal control issue, I usually call, one of the service providers. I don't think to call the town to do it, and maybe that's happening often, and that's why we're doing this. But what I don't really want to do is compete with businesses, particularly if we're doing it at a discounted rate. So either we remove it totally and we let the private sector take care of it, because if we remove the fees, then we're providing a service that normally the private sector would be providing, and we're subsidizing that to the detriment of them. So I want to put some more thought towards this, but those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you. Well, I hadn't actually thought of that aspect that Councillor Gallo mentioned, but I think that's a valid point. I want to approach it also from the other point of view. I don't know, Ms. Van Leeuwen, have you discussed this with our bylaw officers? I imagine that sometimes this would put them in a difficult situation, perhaps traumatic situation. I think you said they're trained, but I'm not sure that they would want to be doing that or we would want them to do that. Do you have any comments on that?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this was actually a recommendation from our animal services supervisor, because she's very compassionate and she wants to be able to respond to our residents when they're looking to have these deceased animals removed, because it is dramatic for some people. And so she is wanting to help, but there is a cost associated with that. So this was a recommendation of our supervisor.
Councillor?
And follow up, and was there any discussion with the officers who are going to be doing this? Or would somebody be able to not have to do this if they don't want to?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm certain that the team is all in, that they deal with these types of situations often, and they save animals often. And so this is their passion, and they understand that this is part of their job. And we've received a lot of compliments from the community in terms of the service they're providing.
Councillor Gardner?
I'm very glad to hear that on both counts. So then it remains Councillor Gallo's point. We never want to compete. I don't think we ever want to compete with local business. So I'd like to have a little more information on that because we don't have to decide till DC. That doesn't have to be a motion, right?
No, that's it. Ms. Van Leeuwen, do you think you can provide us with some more information for next week?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, just to be clear, if the animal, be it domestic or wildlife, was found on the road or even the sidewalk, who picks it up?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, typically our roads division picks up on our public highways.
And sidewalks included?
Yeah, because that's part of the public highway. Yeah. Or if our animal services officers are there, they will also pick it up. So a little bit of both.
Is there any concern by staff if you start charging for the pickup of animals on private property, they're just going to move it over to the sidewalk and then call the town?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I suppose that's always a possibility.
Thank you.
But yeah, like I said, this is a service that we have never provided, picking up of deceased animals on private property.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Now, Ms. Vidula, you sent a message. You just want to clarify something that you said. Did you want to speak now? This is towards Councillor Kim's question. I just wanted to give you an opportunity because you did mention you want to clarify.
If you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity. I believe, and I misspoke when Councillor Kim made the request regarding the artificial turf fees, that in fact, it is the non-resident rates that are being reduced only. The resident rates were fine in comparisons. It's the non-resident rate that was being reduced when we looked at our comparisons. So any unused time, we want to promote use to try to sell it off. And we were finding that we were much higher than our neighboring municipalities. So we want to promote the use of it for our non-residents as well. So to be correct, the report itself is accurate and correct. I just simply misspoke. I wanted to make sure I've clarified that.
Councillor Kim, I'll let you respond if you'd like.
No, thank you. Yeah, I was rereading it again and I was going to try to give you the benefit of the doubt, but thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up to what Ms. McDougall was saying, because my question was in and around that as well. Does the Aurora residents still have first right of refusal, or can an outside organization come in and say, wow, these fees are really low now, and just, you know, book a whole block that's popular and high demand in Aurora?
Ms. McDougall?
No, as our allocation policy still applies, and so our residents and starting with our youth have first rights to our artificial turfs. So it's only in the unused time that's not pursued by our local residents that would be available to non-residents.
Councillor?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.2, 2020 interim forecast update report as of August 31st, 2020. That report number FIN 20-026 be received for information. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Kim. Comments or questions on this report to be received for information? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Wainwright Van Cussel. I was reading the report, and it was very eye-opening. A few statements stating future council decisions may have a big impact with where we are with COVID and the timing of the provincial reopening plan, because we are now in stage 2, significantly impacts the town's operations, and it's very volatile and difficult to predict the impacts. So, you know, thank you for bringing this report forward and being quite open and transparent about our situation as we are on watch for the next coming months and thereafter. I did have some questions. You did state on one of the pages, 3 of 12, about the surplus, and you said that it's much lower than it would be at this time of the year. And I was wondering what that number typically would be at this time of year, without the exception of this kind of year.
Ms. Wainwright Van Cussel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So typically at this time of the year, Aurora sees a surplus in the neighborhood of about 1 to 2%, which is typical for most municipalities. So a 1 to 2% would be between about $500,000 and $1 million surplus. So this is much smaller than what we would normally expect to see at this time. But it is a surplus, and that's thanks to a lot of the management of the COVID situation so far. So we've managed to find a lot of offsets for these revenue losses that we've experienced.
Thank you. And the surplus being 130,000, correct?
Right.
In regards to the snow removal, I know that we were over in the snow removal and winter maintenance due to some unexpected winter maintenance and snow and such. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Down, I just kind of wanted to understand a bit about what those costs were. Was it combination of the new brine and the new kind of salting that we're doing? And I'm going to another follow-up question to that is that, are we going to be prepared for this winter for 2021 and face the same issues, because we are predicted to have one of the worst winters in a long time?
Mr. Downey.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so winter is unpredictable, and our budget actually has the ability to deal with that unpredictability. So we budget for a normal or an average winter, and if we have below average, then there can be some savings associated with that. If we have above average, or that means that we go out more often than we had anticipated, there's actually a reserve fund that's set up to offset any of those overages. However, that is only activated if the surplus, or if there is no surplus within the municipality. So as long as there's a surplus, we don't draw from that reserve. So we are budgeting for an average winter, or average over a number of years. And if we run into issues with regards to additional material, or overtime, then we have a reserve that's available to us.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I had a couple other questions. I had asked about the brine application. Are you starting to use that now? And then there's also, I did a tour last year and there was this blue combined kind of a better kind of salting kind of material that was a little bit more high grade, but you'd said we used less. And so just wondering, have you done a cost analysis of this more expensive salt or whatever you call it, and this brine application, and is this contributing to the winter that we had last year?
With regards to brine, we don't use brine. We actually have it in our capital budget this year, requesting that brine be included as part of our capital budget. So the purchase of a vehicle as well as a storage tank for the brine. With regards to the blue material, it's actually called Thorox. It's a treated salt that activates with any moisture. So we can put that on the road, and it for lack of a better word, has a protection on it to remain there until moisture activates the salt on the road. Those are, I believe that answers both of your questions.
Councillor?
Thank you. So yes, I wasn't sure if the brine was being utilized as of yet, because I know that machine wasn't requested in the budget before. I just didn't know, because I know that Clorox salt is a very premium product. And from my understanding in conversations, it would require us to use less, but we're having a very strong winter and unpredictable, it could actually cost more. So just knowing that we're going to have a really rough winter, what's being predicted, I hope we take those in consideration for this year, because we might be in the exact same predicament for next year. And how are we going to handle that?
So if I can, Mr. Mayor, wouldn't mind commenting on that. Those are fair, and those are the discussions we have around the table. So first of all, with regards to the amount of material that we put on, we've actually been reducing the amount of salt that we've been placing on the roads, not jeopardizing safety, but I believe there was too much salt being put on the roads. And in fact, we received an award from the Conservation Authority for our soil conservation, or salt conservation, in fact. So we are looking at putting on just the right amount of material on the roads in order to maintain safety, but make sure that we do a little harm to the environment as we possibly can. It is an expensive product, and so obviously we want to use as little of it as we possibly can. And many events involve only salt and don't involve plowing at all. Same trucks go out, but we don't drop the plows because there's no snow on the road. We're dealing with ice buildup on the road. So it all depends on the type of event that we have, and we do our very best to try to minimize the amount of material that is going out onto our road system.
Councillor?
Thank you. Okay, so where I was going to lead into that is whether or not we should be subsidizing some sand within that to reducing the costs, and obviously reducing the amount of salt that we're putting out into the watershed, because that's obviously super important. But you've answered my question, so that's great.
I can talk about sand. I can talk about winter maintenance all night long, actually. But
yes, well, we'll leave. Well, if you want to comment about the sand, go ahead.
We don't use sand on the roads. We do it. We actually use it on our sidewalks, but we don't use sand on the road. That was disbanded 8 or 10 years ago, a long time ago. We went with straight salt for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's more effective. The sand builds up on the streets. So there's additional buildup of sand material on our roads in the spring, which means we have to remove it. That sand goes into our catch basin system, and now we are clogging our storm sewers. Our storm sewers lead into our storm ponds, and our storm ponds now have more buildup in them, and they have a shorter life expectancy. So there's a domino effect for putting sand on our roads. So there were definitely some advantages to going just with salt.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I'll have a different conversation with you offline about the Clorox salt. I'll leave that alone. I guess a question for Rachel, Ms. Wainwright Van Cussel again, through you, Mr. Mayor, about the water. A couple questions. One, there was a line there that said about the fixed rates that are not metered in the water, and I was wondering what that was, and if you can explain what the calculation error was.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So do you mean the fixed costs relating to water and wastewater?
Yeah, well, there was a line there. It said the water is fixed water rates that are not metered. So I want to know what that was referencing.
Okay, I'm just trying to find the line.
Sorry, I made a note. I didn't highlight it on the sheet, or else I would direct you there. It might have been in the
because we
analysis.
talk about the fixed costs relating to water. So those are the costs that are not the actual water itself, but the costs of like doing the billings, doing the water testing, and those are the more regular fixed costs that we have. So those are not costs that we can save based on the actual metered usage of water. And as for the calculation errors, so as we were working through 2020, we discovered that when we were doing the stormwater billing, the number that was used for the calculation since 2019 did not include the appropriate number of billings that were to be used for that calculation. So it was actually reporting a higher number of billings by about 18% than what we were actually billing out. So we ended up recovering less money. So we are planning to fix that through the 2021-2022 budget, but that's why we're seeing that deficit. Because what we do is we take the overall cost of the stormwater budget and then divide it by the number of billings. And as you know, it's a monthly charge, so it should be something that we should be able to get right, but I'm not sure exactly how the billings have been calculated when the rate was first established. So we are fixing that for the 21 budget.
Great, thank you very much. I did find the paragraph that says the fixed costs relating to water and wastewater funded from the net revenues, yada, yada, yada. Okay, you know what? It's never mind. I've answered my own question. That's fine. Another question was you had on your chart business support, and I was trying to find within the report a little bit of analysis on that, and I was wondering if you can kind of touch on what that specifically was.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, which chart specifically are you asking about the attachment?
Yes. Trying to find it. I think it's under community services. Business support under community services.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. So the variance in that area is actually related to ICE rental revenue. So what has happened is the system that we use, ActiveNet, is known to have some challenges in calculating what the deferred revenue is. So this would be revenue that would be collected in one year, but the ICE rental is actually for the following year. So generally we have to do an accrual to push that revenue into the following year. So what happened was there was an issue back in 2019, where the deferred revenue was not done properly. So we had to fix it this year.
Councillor?
Okay, I'll have more questions later about that. And lastly, there was a sentence in here about the BIA and the levy that was being collected. And you said it was included, but yet we haven't really approved it. So I'm just wondering why we're choosing to include that number within our overall levy when it doesn't really apply to all of the residents. It's just a specific spot of Aurora. So I'm just wondering why we decide to include that.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the levy relating to the BIA, as you know, earlier this year, the BIA decided to forego the levy for 2020. So we are not collecting that tax revenue, but then we are also not going to be remitting it to them. So while it does result in a lower amount of tax revenue and lower cost, it has no net impact to the town.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Miss Rachel Wainwright Van Kessel. Just to clarify while we're all here, the COVID subsidy that we received from the federal government of $1.2 million. If you could just confirm in what instance we can utilize that funding. For instance, if we have one bucket within our operating budget that's in a deficit due to COVID, but we have surpluses in other buckets. And as you know, at the end of each fiscal year, we do a right sizing. That's normal course of housekeeping in the corporation, and we right size all the buckets again. So if one bucket was negatively impacted by COVID, but because of the surpluses at an operating level in other buckets, and it smooths it out, does that mean that we cannot use the COVID funding for that one particular bucket? Is the COVID funding for the overall net deficit of the corporation, or can it be used in a tactical perspective from a silo perspective?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the COVID funding that we received for, so far is $1,298,500, so just shy of 1.3 million. So that was awarded on a per household basis. So it was not based on a specific need or a specific application. It was on a per household basis. So for this types of funding, we're allowed to use it to offset some of the impacts of COVID, whether it be revenue losses or whether it be additional costs that we need to accommodate our workspace for COVID as well. So we could use it in operating or capital, for instance. The other way that we can also use it is we can contribute some of that money to reserve as well and use that next year. So one of the things that you'll see in the budget that comes forward next week is we are planning to contribute some of that money to reserve to offset some of those COVID pressures that we're expecting for 2021. So we'll be preserving some of that while also using it against some of the costs that we've had so far. Luckily, a lot of the COVID expenses we were able to save during the complete shutdown through reducing staffing, removing ice, removing water from the pools. But now as we move into this modified stage 2, it's a little bit of a different situation. So we will see how things go. This forecast reflects the stage that we were at before we moved to modified stage 2. So there could be some potential further deficits resulting from the situation we're in now. But we will be very strategic in how we use it because we want to make sure that we also preserve some of the money for next year to deal with some of those pressures that continue into 21.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you. And so are you saying that in community services, because of COVID and the lack of revenues coming in that silo, resulting in a negative balance there, but in operational services, we have a surplus. So in a specific example like that, when I'm not sure what you're referring to when you say household. So if we have in community services a deficit due to COVID, but through great planning on our part, operational services in a surplus, and by right sizing at the end of the year, we're net zero or a small surplus. Does that mean that we could not use the COVID funding? Sure, we can use it for we can save it for another year for 2021, but so in that particular situation, can we use the COVID funding to right size community services as an example?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we can use it to right size community services. But at the end of the day, if we were to apply the funding to community services and then overall it increased our surplus by the same amount, we would still be going through our surplus management policy, which would still top up some money into like our tax stabilization and our other reserves. So it's a matter of how we use the funds. What I'm suggesting is we just need to be strategic as we go into 2021, that we're looking at adding additional funds into tax stabilization to manage the ongoing impacts of this pandemic so that we can make sure that we're prepared for what may come in the future. This funding that was provided on a per household basis, so it's basically provided on a calculation basis. It was not provided based on any particular budget need or application. So as we move into 2021, we do not know what the funding requirements or how it will be allocated out based on what happens next year. So I'm just thinking, as for the town, we should be prudent and make sure that we protect ourselves for what we know we may have as impacts next year, while at the same time ensuring that we do not end up in a deficit situation this year. And also, with us looking at only a surplus of $130,000, that's a very small amount. And given our move to the modified stage 2, that could be reduced significantly.
Councillor?
I think I got the gist of it, but I think I can talk to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel offline to sort out the more detailed items. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered, thanks to the other councillors. I'm just going to go into the report. With respect to, in the background section on page 2, you were talking about the economic shutdowns and also the influence that some of the negative influences on our residents that would perhaps require some residents to ask us for a special permission with respect to taxes or late payments. With respect to the whole package about waiving all the late payment penalties and deferrals, do you have a figure on how much that cost us?
Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So some of the numbers are included in my budget, in particular relating to the waiving of certain fees, like the transfer from water to tax bills, and part of it is in the corporate budget as well. To give you an accurate figure, I'd like to be able to pull those numbers together, but I can tell you based on our initial estimates, and I know when council was weighing the options of reducing the penalty on taxes or going with the application-based system,
Right.
Our losses were not as large as we originally expected them to be. So we are still collecting now roughly about $100,000 a month on penalties on taxes, and that's with the application process being in place.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I just wanted to express my appreciation to our CAO, our treasurer, and all members of ELT. I mean, as we see in the report, you know, the reduction of revenue to the tune of $5 million is significant. And the fact that they were able to work collectively to try and mitigate the impact of this loss in revenue and, you know, end up with a small surplus, I think that's better than we could have thought of 3 months ago. And certainly, while I don't know how the other municipalities in York Region are faring, I have to think that we weathered the storm better than most. And so just wanted to express my appreciation and acknowledge their efforts.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. First one on page 48. Under corporate services, legal services, just a quick explanation there. There's a deficit of 142,000, just over 9%. Just to give me a sense of what drove that.
Mr. Sarah?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Marcus. That is mainly in regard to the Yonge Street Heritage Appeals. We do pay for the experts under legal services budget. And so there was the added cost of the experts witness that was doing all the heritage reports. And then there was the cost of the legal services, the legal external lawyer.
Councillor?
Thank you. On page 49, I don't know if I know Councillor Gillen had asked Mr. Downey about last year's, well, 20, I guess, well, last winter's rationale for just over $500,000 over budget, 31%. But I'm not sure I heard the answer to that through you to Mr. Downey, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the winter maintenance budget, what we do is we take an average over a number of years and determine a budget. And then that budget, depending on what the weather is for that particular winter, can either be over budget or under budget. And that's the reason for a reserve fund set up in order to buffer that. So there's
maybe
okay.
if I could be clear, just to focus in on last year and the
more events. So we were at more events than we had anticipated. I haven't got the exact number of events. I'm thinking it's 28, but don't hold me to that. But we had more events than we had anticipated in the budget.
Councillor?
So over 30%. Wow. Okay. The other question under community services, business support. Not sure if I'm reading this correctly, but the budget, we anticipated a deficit of 534,000. We forecasted 360. So we're just, if someone could go through that line and help me understand it, there's a deficit of 167,000. 895,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the actual budget there, the 534,000, that would be a net revenue of 534,000 to a cost of 360,000. This is one of the areas that's been in particular that has also been hit by lost revenues relating to COVID-19 as well.
So was there a deficit of 895,000, net deficit of 895,000?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for this particular area, yes. So we have ICE rental revenues here, community program revenues, a number of the revenues that are listed under the COVID-19 section, like the $5 million in revenues that were identified there. There's a number of them that do happen to fall under this group as well.
So through you, was that the majority of that deficit? The loss of revenue from all the services that we were providing, pool, skating, all of that?
Ms. Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that was most of the impact, unless Ms. McDougall has anything else you'd like to add.
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, this business support looks after our rental facilities and programs that the dollars come through them. As far as the aquatics programs, that falls under the other line called recreational programming. So the business support is predominantly our meeting spaces and our ice rentals. That's predominantly what you'll see in those lines. I believe that Ms. Wainwright Van Kuss also noted this had a piece to do with the deferral component. I'm not sure if I'm correct in that, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, if this line also included some of those considerations that were being corrected.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it does. It also factors in the deferral of ICE revenue as well.
Councillor?
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, do you have your hand up for a second time? Or is it just up from last time?
It was up for a second time, but my question's been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gilliland, second time?
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Wainwright Van Kussel. Thank you for the restart program clarification. That was a question I had forgotten to ask. Another question I had forgotten to ask as well is about the penalties on unpaid property taxes of 26.6%. Is this something that's currently where we stand, or have we taken into account December 31st? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have given residents the option to defer till December 31st. Is that correct?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the option to defer is up until December 1st, which is our next and our final tax payment for this year. So to be able to actually do that deferral, they had to apply online on or before the date the actual taxes were due. So we have been a little bit lenient if some have come in a bit late, but our expectation is that taxes will all come in as of December 1st.
Councillor?
Thank you. Thank you. And will council receive some sort of report or update on this collection and kind of a bit of a status of what's going on, considering we are in stage 2? You know, Bank of Canada said over 720,000 mortgages have been deferred until December 31st. So we really don't know what we're looking like in our economic outlook, I guess, within our town, Canada, our country. So are we going to get some sort of an update based on the property taxes that would be unpaid before the end of the year at least, or by January?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we should be able to provide an update possibly by council in December as to where we stand. One of the things we have noted is we also have to do these calculations for our payments to the region, because the region is allowing us to defer our payment to them for the portion that we have not received. We have been receiving most of the taxes on time from our residents. So it seems as though our residents have had the ability to pay. We haven't really noticed a significant change in the amount that's outstanding or unpaid. We've had not as many people opt for or people or corporations opt for the deferral as what we originally expected for that program. So it seems that people who can pay their taxes are paying their taxes, and we're not noticing too significant a difference, but we can definitely let you know after that December 1st deadline passes where we're at.
Perfect. I would appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, seeing none. I'd also like to just thank our CAO as well, and all of ELT and the EOC team. The EOC team was making quite a lot of decisions on the fly, and I think they did an incredible job throughout this, for the first 7 months of the pandemic, and they put us in a position to be well established as we move forward into our next budget cycle. So thank you very much to staff for all the hard work that they've done through this. And I'm sure all the residents appreciate everything that you guys have done through this as well. I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk, health break?
It is 9 o'clock, so it will be appropriate.
10 minutes, council. I'll see you back here at 9:10. Is everybody back? I need 2 more to start. One more. Councilors? Thank you. All right. 8.3, tree removal permit applications for 126 Temperance Street and 53 Metcalf Street. 1, that report number OPS 20-016 be received, and 2, that the tree removal permit application for 126 Temperance Street be approved, and 3, that the tree removal permit application for 53 Metcalf Street be approved. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Gilliland. Comments or questions on this report? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.4. Heritage designation for 28 Wellington Street West, the Alfred Love House. Resolution 1, that report number PDS 20-60 be received. 2, that the property at 28 Wellington Street, where the building known as Alfred Love House is located, be designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act as a property of cultural heritage value or interest. And 3, that the town clerk be authorized to publish and serve council's notice of intention to designate in accordance with the requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act. And 4, that the designation bylaw be brought before council for adoption if no objections are received within the 30-day period as per the Ontario Heritage Act. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Through you, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Humphreys, I was hoping that maybe you could shed some light on some of the comments through the Heritage Committee. I know you were probably there.
Councillor Humphreys.
Hi, thank you, through Councillor Gilliland. I mean, through Mayor, to Councillor Gilliland. Yes, yeah, this was, a great. It's kind of a great story. It's one of the nicer ones where we get forward and having individuals that want to have a designated listed property. So we would support that absolutely in happening. And I, in fact, one of the things I was going to ask for today was, when where are we going to have a presentation? Because I know that what's one of the things we used to do is have a nice presentation in terms of when we did plaque and so on. But yes, it was very positively received. It met the criteria. The evaluation group got together and had a good report coming out as a significant. That there was an important part of our heritage and character throughout the neighborhood. And so, yeah, very good, positive reception.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's good to hear. Just a quick question. The owners of this property, they are already property notified of the designation and in support of it as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Councillor?
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Just really quickly, no questions, just a comment. That's good to hear. Property owners are interested in doing this and supportive of this, and reading the cultural heritage evaluation report, it's kind of a walk down memory lane and a historic perspective that I find fascinating. And anyone who wants to know history of Aurora, particularly on these buildings, it's a great read to show how far back some of these properties go and the history behind them.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Humphreys.
To you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize. I meant to ask the question at our meeting, but and what I'll just state it. I am going to look into how we, you know, it doesn't happen as often, and I'm sure we'll have more of this as we get onto evaluating our listed properties, and if more and more to become designated heritage or removed from the list. You know, are we going to be doing some, you know, sort of a celebration and plaquing and communicating to the, you know, to the community? I believe we used to do that years ago, and it's been a while since we've done that. So I'll follow up with our heritage resource and bring it up during our meeting next month. HAC meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? I have one. I mean, obviously, I had a comment. It's a no-brainer. But Mr. Waters, the recommendation out of the evaluation is that council. My understanding is it sounds like they're saying that council designates the building envelope and the setting. Are we looking at just designating the building, or will we also be designating the setting?
Through you, well, to you, Mr. Chair, it's designating the building, the attributes that are on the building, and the property itself.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we're all clear on that. Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
So I do want to quickly mention the senior heritage consultant. I was so impressed with the report, and her name is Kelly Gilbride. She did a fantastic job at analyzing this property. Again, it's well worth a read.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you, Councillor Gallo. And this is going to be a very exciting building, hopefully, as we move forward and as we continue with the revitalization of downtown core. I think this is going to be an integral part of that, showcasing our heritage while moving forward to the future. Any other comments or questions? I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay. Notice is a motion. We have one for next week. Councillor Kim, your motion will deal with next week. New business. I will go around on the screen. Councillor Gardner, new business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Beaton's questions?
Mr. Waters? Did you get all the questions from the delegate?
I hope I have most of them. I can only answer the ones that relate to the engineering side of it to the best of my ability. My understanding is that with regards to the curbs, they are going to be poured, I believe, either Thursday or Friday as we near the end of the construction period. My understanding from ANCA is that there's a construction shortage in the GTA. And so, you know, the urgency is to get the curbs poured and then the asphalt laid on top of the road. In terms of the road, the way it's designed, you have to understand that it goes from a rural cross section to a curb and gutter. And so that requires a different type of grading and slopes on the driveways for drainage purposes and also for the road so it can drain properly into the catch basin. So my understanding from ANCA is that there were some adjustments required through the process after the design was done to accommodate for any issues that arose during the construction of the road. Are there any other questions? I think those are the ones that relate to engineering.
Okay, so we do have Ms. Van Leeuwen, tickets, parking tickets.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So our bylaw services division can work with engineering to understand the timelines of when the residents were requested to park on Glass Drive, and we will not issue parking tickets during that time unless it's with respect to a safety concern, like parking in front of a fire hydrant or too close to an intersection, creating sightline issues. I do think that we should likely notify the residents on Glass Drive as well, as they may see an increase in parking on their road during construction to accommodate that construction. So we will work with engineering to resolve that.
Okay. And then I think, Councilor Gardner, I'm just trying to go through the questions that I can remember as well. So, Ms. Desario, I believe there's some legal questions as well.
Yes, thank you. So the typical process with claims that involve construction contracts is that legal services does acknowledge the claim, but then it is forwarded to the contractor in accordance with the terms of the contract, and it's up to the contractor to resolve it. And so legal services does follow up, and we are still involved in terms of finding out what happened. I would need more specifics because I know that there has been a few claims within the area. And so what I can do is I'll follow up with staff tomorrow to ensure that all the claims have either been acknowledged or followed up with, or just to see where all the claims are at this time.
Okay. Councilor Garner, do you remember, was there anything else?
I'm sorry, there were more, but I didn't write them down.
Okay. Councilor Humphreys, I see you.
I have a couple. I think I wrote them down. One of them is the question they had is, there are some trees. It says, will we be say after all the construction's done and there's some issues with trees dying, will the town accept that? I guess situation and help with the removal of trees that don't make it? That doesn't have to be answered today. That could be maybe as a follow-up if we don't know that.
Mr. Waters, would you be dealing with that, or am I going to go to Mr. Downey?
I believe we have an arborist that's part of the construction, the contractors team. We'd be working with operations, Mr. Downey's group, Parks group, to determine which trees need to be removed and the species to be replaced on the properties if they're required to be removed. Sorry, through Mr. Chair, there was a question about the slopes of the driveways, the grades, and I just remember that. So what I understand, excuse me, there's about 6 properties that have excessive grades more than 8%, based on the reconstruction of the road and the curb and gutter installation. Typically, driveways and new developments have a 2 to 8% grade. These 6 have excess of 8%. So we're going to work with the residents to sort of reduce the grade as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. And I think that also the timeline.
That's the one, yeah.
Mr. Waters, is this going to finish on time? Do you have an end date for it, approximate?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are expecting to finish before the construction season ends and the asphalt plants are shut down. So we're hoping to be finished, no later than mid-November.
Okay, so it's going to go a little bit longer than it was originally anticipated.
That's correct, sir. Again, there's a concrete shortage, and so we need to make sure that we can pour the curbs in time and then lay the top coat.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gardner?
Thank you. With respect to the grades, I mean, it's a huge grade on the driveways. That's something that would have been anticipated through engineering before this work was done. it seems to me would have to have been. From what Ms. Beaton said, it also seems to me like it was a surprise to the residents. So do you have any comment on that? Because if we know that this is going to be happening beforehand, it would be a good idea to put the residents in the loop.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe, well, if you go from open ditches with a 1% grade to some driveways that are in excess of 8, it's a pretty much of a shock, and I can appreciate that from the residents' perspective. I believe engineering did hold an open house before construction began and did present this information. Now, again, until the work is actually done, and it's kind of hard to visualize some of the impact to the driveways. But as I said before, we've identified 6 that need to be remediated, and we will do our best to do that.
Councillor?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Waters, for acknowledging that it would be a bit of a shock. Certainly a change. So anything that can be done to help would be appreciated. And just if you wouldn't mind checking to make sure that the open house did, sometimes you see something on a drawing, you don't really understand what it's going to mean in reality, but just to make sure that the open house did address that issue, if you would.
Mr. Waters?
Mr. Chair, yes, certainly, Councillor Gardner.
Thanks.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Following on something that has to do with parking and parking tickets, there's a situation in the Light of Christ area, which is McClellan Way, where a crossing guard, which takes care of the 2 schools there, needs to have a place to park while she's working. And she's parking on a side street, and I guess this would be to Ms. Van Leeuwen. I believe bylaw wanted to give her a ticket, or did give her a ticket, because she was over the 2-hour limit. And I'm wondering, I mean, this is her job. She's got to park somewhere. She can't park on the schoolyard. She doesn't live directly in that area, close enough to be able to park. So could we find a way that we could help this woman out?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly we can review it. I don't know if there's other options on other side streets. If you could forward to me some information, and
thanks.
We will review.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that. And Mr. Mayor, I was not fast enough on the draw with respect to 8.3. So I'd just like to make a comment about the black walnut tree on Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
So the situation is that the resident was trimming, I think, the lower branches of the tree with the intent to cut it down. So the tree was quite damaged by the time bylaw came over to have a look at it. So I'd like to just throw it out to council to think about, because I'll bring it back up at council. How do we prevent, in general, this has happened before, how do we prevent things like this happening, where you trim a tree to such an extent, either with the intent to cut it down, or so that it's not going to survive or look very good? And I guess to Ms. Van Leeuwen, is there a penalty that's issued when you need to get a permit, or you need to pay an amount of money to cut a tree down, and you don't go through that process? Is there a penalty that's issued, or is there a penalty that can or should be issued?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm certain that we do have set fines, so we do have tickets, or we could lay charges and prosecute. We would rely on our arborists, as they have specialized knowledge in terms of damage to trees. Yeah, so we would need somebody with that specialized knowledge to confirm that, cutting of branches is creating damage to the tree.
Councillor?
You know what, Ms. Van Leeuwen, if you wouldn't mind, I'll speak to you before the council meeting. Thank you.
Certainly.
I don't think it's quite as clear cut is that? Thanks.
Thanks. Anything else, Councillor?
That's all for new business.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, new business? Councillor Humphreys, new business?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to answer quickly to Councillor Gardner's concerns on the black walnut, what happened was this owner thought she was in a non-heritage area. It was the southeast, not the northeast that's designated. So she thought they were okay to take down the one walnut between her and her neighbor. They both wanted, it's very tight in a narrow passageway in between both homes. So they just, you know, they've been there for 12 years. The tree got really overgrown. It was cute when it was small. They should have moved it when they had the opportunity. So they thought it was okay to cut it down because they're allowed to cut 2 trees without notifying. Well, they were stopped and they didn't realize that their house was a listed property. And they thought that because they voted on Southeast District not to have that designation a few years ago, that their house was not, there wasn't any issue. So that's why we need to work on that listed property guide, because every household owner should know whether their home is listed or not. And I'm sure there's some out there that aren't aware of it. If they don't think they have a designation, they probably don't realize that. So then, yes, Ryan, the bylaw officer went and they got stopped. And then they went through and, the tree got, as you can see, severely damaged with the beginning of cutting that tree down, including the crown. So at this point in their story is that the walnuts were just causing some hazards within the way they're situated, broke a car window because the walnuts were sharp, and just because it just got really big and they didn't realize again that they were listed. So I agree with Councillor Gardner. It has to be, this has to be looked at very much so, but we do need to look at where we're at with the listed properties and are we designating or taking them off, because that's a big deal. So that hopefully that gives Councillor Gardner a little bit of information. My other question is, with the extension of the work being done on Johnson, Holman, and Bailey, do the residents know that the construction is going to be longer than what they anticipated, which I believe they thought it would be done by the end of October? And if not, how are we going to let them know? We really need to keep them up to date. And I just want to add that, they're very happy with the support they're getting with Jeremy on site and our staff. They've been thrilled. I keep getting emails that they're doing the best they can, but I think with changes that, like the extension of construction, that the neighbors really should know so they can prepare. Be really great.
Mr. Waters, are we going to be notifying? Can we notify the residents of the end date?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we can do that, and we'll firm up the end of construction as well, and provide some timelines as to when certain pieces of work are going to be done as well, so the residents can be ready for that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank staff and Mr. Mayor for joining me on yesterday. There were some residents that were concerned with the grading, but to Mr. Waters' point, once the road gets built up and the curbs are in, then the understanding of the sloping of the driveway. And one of the things I have heard over and over again through the open house is that they weren't aware that the grading or sloping of the driveways was going to change. Some of them very significantly. They were flat and they now have quite a steep drop. And we have an allowance of, I can't remember how many feet now, but from an engineering perspective, most of them comply to our allowance, and the ones that were not, as Mr. Waters mentioned, they're going to be corrected. But it's just a big deal that the changes has caused quite a difference on these residents long-term. Some of them, their driveway is such a big change. So if we can get someone to take a peek at that and find out how, if it was there, that's good. And if it wasn't, how we can learn from this so that residents aren't shocked when they find the difference of their driveways sloped, particularly again from a flat driveway to one that's quite steep. I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gill, and new business?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's a few more questions that Ms. Beaton had asked. So I'm just going to get right to it. The other one was Confederation Park overnight parking. They had requested if they had required some parking off-site away from their home, would there be some lenience to park overnight in Confederation Park?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that bylaw received that request, and that would, because it's a park, we would need approval from Mr. Downey to authorize that.
Mr. Downer, is there a way that the residents there could apply for a special temporary parking for the next couple of weeks at Confederation Park?
I have no objection at all. It's all Dave has to do is send me a letter and ask him for the request, and then I make sure that bylaw is aware of it. So, but we haven't been asked, so we have no objection at all. I think it's a good solution, actually.
Perfect, great, thank you. Another question was homeowners driveway side, so their property, the driveway side. Some of them had noticed there was some damage to the asphalt, I guess, on their side, and they're wondering if we were going to absorb the cost of repairing that.
Mr. Waters, I believe anything that gets damaged does get repaired as per the construction agreement.
That's through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. Yes. So if there's any damage done to the driveways into the private property as part of the work, that'll be remediated
Councillor?
and restored.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, you had mentioned that you had an arborist on site to identify which trees or shrubs need to be removed to do the job, or perhaps would need replacing. If something were not to survive through the winter due to root damage and it's not identified in November, is there a certain timeline if it didn't survive to the spring where the resident could claim that shrub that was, I guess, in the arborist and engineering's opinion was acutely affected by this construction? Would that be replaced?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't really have an answer for you on that since I'd have to refer back to ANCA and see what the terms are, unless Mr. Downey can assist with that answer.
Mr. Downey?
Our position is that we do not go onto private property. So no, we will not be assisting with private property. If it's part of a construction project, then it will stay with the contractor and the contractor's responsibility for making sure that those trees survive. But we will not be entering private property.
Councillor?
Thank you. So what you're saying is if a shrub or a tree doesn't survive through the construction, it's the resident's responsibility to take legal action against or get restitution from, whatever it may be, to the contractor and not through the town?
Mr. Downey?
What I'm saying is it doesn't become operations responsibility to go onto private property after a contractor has damaged the tree beyond its ability to survive. So it should be, in our opinion, the responsibility of the contractor to make good any damages that they incur or on any trees.
Councillor?
Thank you. So if I was on the street and I had realized that one of my tree roots are badly damaged, spring, my tree's dead, do I contact the town? Then the town would contact the contractor and say, you need to rectify the situation? I just want to know who the resident's supposed to call, and then the kind of like the nature of how it happened.
So we
Mr. Downey?
We had a similar situation on Spruce, I'll say maybe 6 years ago or so, where the contractor come in and done damage to a number of street trees. And so we were concerned that those street trees would not survive the damage that was done, which is the reason that we've now insisted on ensuring there's an arborist attached to all of these contracts. So the responsibility for ensuring the survivability of all plant material lies with the contract and is not transferred to the town.
Councillor?
Okay, so I'll talk to you offline. I'm a little bit confused about that because I kind of feel like something were to happen, that the resident wouldn't really be protected. And I just don't know how that remediation would work. So I'll talk to you offline about that. Just a follow-up question to the, will the tickets be issued to these residents? And the answer from bylaw is that they will work with the residents to not issue tickets on the street. But the question wasn't answered is whether or not they would waive the current tickets that have been issued as a result of them parking on these streets. Will they waive these tickets that these residents have currently been issued?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any tickets that have been issued, so I will have to take a look at that and the timelines as well to just identify that the timelines of any tickets that were issued are related to the construction. So I will review that, but I'm not aware of any tickets that were issued.
Councillor?
Thank you. So if a resident on that street had a ticket issued, they could certainly come to bylaw and state their case to you in reference to this particular construction, and we would waive it in this instance that's related to the construction.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly they can reach out and we will review and take appropriate action.
That's just what I wanted to hear. Thank you. And one last thing, and I'm sorry this is dragging on, but I know there are specific questions by Ms. Beaton, and it was in relation to the legal side of it. And Ms. Desario, you had said that the information sent directly to the contractor and you'd filed the contractor, but will the legal department acknowledge the resident email to say, thank you for your email, we have received it and have passed this information on to appropriate people? Is that a responsibility that the town will be taking on?
Ms. Desario?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something that legal services typically does. In this case, because I don't know any specifics, I don't know if it was typically done, if it was done in this case. If it hasn't, then I will ensure that those emails are sent.
Councillor?
Great. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, new business?
Thank you. Regarding the 3-bag garbage limit and the education program that's going on in October, through you to Mr. Downey, or whoever does the education, I'm just wondering how the whether there's been any feedback and how that education program is going.
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so we've been working extensively with our communications division, getting the information out to residents. So far, very well received. We haven't heard any, at least I haven't heard any issues related to that. And we are working towards an education program at this point. So we are picking up all garbage that is at the curb. However, effective January 1st, we will be limiting that as per the council approved bylaw to 3 bags.
Councillor?
Yeah, and thank you. And it must be just bad memory, but I thought that we were limiting to 3 bags, but there was the option that residents could pay for tags and put it on and have it picked up. Why is that not? And I confirmed from the communication that that was not tags was not an option. So why would GFL not provide that as an option for residents who want to pay for extra garbage bags for pickup?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a combination of a number of things. First of all, the bylaw does not identify a tag program. We have looked at our regional partners with regards to our bag limit, and we are at the upper end. No one has less than 3 bags limit with regards to their garbage pickup. The purpose of limiting garbage is to make a smaller footprint. We are looking at trying to reduce the amount of waste within the community. It is good for the environment. It's also good for the bottom line because we pay by weight. So we are not encouraging people who have the means to pay more to put out more garbage. What we're trying to do is educate them at this point to say, how well can you manage your garbage? And 3 bags seems to be the maximum limit within the York region with regards to how much garbage you can put out. If we find that once we institute the program, that perhaps there is some concern from residents, it's something we can revisit. But at this point, we are not proposing a bag tag program, so that we can ensure that we are putting out as little garbage as we possibly can, and making as small an imprint on the environment as we possibly can.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. And I understand that, and I applaud the objective, and I agree with that. It's just that I think having a tag, an option of buying a tag, whether it be $5, $10, $20, at least it helps those who have large families an option, so that they don't have to put a smelly, garbage bag in their trunk or in their SUV. I would imagine probably at least 5-10% of residents or households use more than 3 garbage bags, unfortunately. But if they do have large homes, per person, it's probably no different than someone who has only 3-person household. So in terms of, you said the bottom line, if we're charging for these tags, our bottom line, it wouldn't increase at all, would it not?
Mr. Downey?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I look at most municipalities, they charge about $2 a tag. I haven't done the evaluation to determine whether or not $2 actually is the appropriate fee in order to cover the cost of that. But even with bag tags, there's also a limit. So many municipalities say you can put out 2 bags, but you can only put out 5 total, and you need 3 tags. So there's always a limit, regardless of whether or not there are bag tags or not. So we are proposing that we move forward with a limit, and that if we need to then adjust that limit through the bag tag system, fine. But once we get to that point, we will then be evaluating at least a cost neutral system in which a bag tag would not be an additional cost to the community.
Okay.
Councillor?
Yeah, and thank you. So my last question, just to wrap this up, is can we just give you, can I give you direction from an email? Do you need a notice of motion on this? And if council decides that we would have an additional 2 bags with the tags, and staff, can do the financial review in terms of how much we should charge, and we can put a limit on that in terms of 2 tags per household or something like that. What's the turnaround time for GFL to implement it? Does it take them a month or 2 months to provide that service once the town agrees, or is it as soon as you make the call, they'll do it the week after?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's instantaneous. So GFL works for us. So if we direct them to pick up X number of bags, that's what they'll do. What we haven't done is, as you know, we actually have a bylaw that says you can't put out any more than 3 bags. And GFL, we've given them direction, since we're not enforcing it, to pick up whatever's on the curb. And whether that's 2 bags or 20 bags, that's what we pick up. We're trying to get into a system where we have a better understanding of where our issues are. So I'm not a proponent of entering into a bag system or a tag system at this point, because I don't know that we have an issue. But some people may have some concern with regards to limiting themselves to 3 bags. But as I said, that's at the upper limit. There are some municipalities that have lower bag limits than that, and tags beyond that. I believe that Aurora has a generous bag limit at this point, and that most residents should be able to abide within that.
Councillor?
Okay. Okay, thank you. I know, given that we're hitting the colder months, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. But as we approach the warmer months next year, I suspect this is going to come back to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, new business. Councillor Thompson, public service announcements. Councillor Kim, public service.
No.
Councillor Gilliland, PSA.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of remind people that we still have a lot of Halloween in the bags and that the residents could order them online at aurora.ca/haunted greenhouse. And then you can pick them up on Saturday, October 24th at the JOC between 1 and 3 p.m. These Halloween in a bag are $20. And there's 7 activities, crafts, 2 STEM activities, word games, slime, kit, and more. Plenty of activity to keep your kids busy during this Halloween time. I know that it's not recommended to go trick-or-treating right now, but certainly Town of Aurora has a lot for the residents to do, including not only that, but just the haunted green forest as well. So there's the greenhouse, rather, not green forest. And there's plenty of spaces open still between Monday and Thursday. So please register before that does fill up, because it is filling up pretty quickly. And another thing is there is a Culture in a Box deadline. The submission deadline is October the 24th. So please make sure that you get your submission in for your Culture in a Box for that as well at the farmers market. And last but not least, for the month of October and the online Skylight Gallery, there's plenty of artwork that's shown of Ramona Rickens in her art show, Perceptions, the Beauty That Surrounds You. And that's Aurora's online Skylight Gallery if you visit aurora.ca/Skylight Gallery.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, PSA.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder, second last Aurora Farmers Market this Saturday. Last one's the 31st. So hopefully be able to attend. We saw some great produce and lots of farmers still there and lots of artisans. So hopefully we see you 8 to 1 on Saturday. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, PSA.
Just really quickly, as we know, modified stage 2 restaurants are now closed to dining. So let's do our best to support our restaurants and takeout and help them out during these very, very difficult times.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardner, PSA. You're on mute, Councillor.
Thank you. First time tonight, Mr. Mayor. The Cultural Center has a fantastic exhibit on our second floor at the Town Hall. Absolutely breathtaking and stunning, but nobody can see it. But they do have a virtual exhibit, and it is well worth anybody having a look at. I'd like all of our residents to support the Town of Aurora and go for our Halloween offerings. But if we get sold out, you might want to check out St. John's Ambulance. They're having a zombie walk, and it sounds like it's going to be fantastic, and also will support local businesses in the region. And it is quite affordable. $25 for a family. So please check out the Town of Aurora first, and then St. John's Ambulance.
Thank you. This Thursday at 8 a.m. It is the 12th annual Aurora Prayer Breakfast. This year is obviously going to be a bit different. It is virtual, but it is also free. And so we're, anyone that would like to join in, they can just visit auroraprayerbreakfast.ca, make your coffee, and home breakfast ready, sit down and enjoy, a gathering of some inspirational speakers. It will be a fabulous time, as it always is. The only difference is it'll be virtual. So I look forward to seeing everyone there. And as well, I just wanted to make mention, Don Walker is retiring from Magna, And I just want to thank him for all his contributions that, you know, as CAO that he's put forward in helping the community, not only just our town, but also all of the York Region. Magna does phenomenal work giving back to the community. And, you know, part of that is comes from the CAO, Don Walker. And so I just wanted to wish him all the best from the town of Aurora on his retirement and his future endeavors. With that, Councillor Gallo, you are correct. We really do need to be supporting our local businesses at this time with the stage 2 modified. No one was expecting to go back. It's going to be a hard time for a lot of our businesses. So if we can go out and if we can, if you're able to, please support any of our local businesses. Obviously, the restaurants are the ones that we can go out. They're offering still takeout, but some of them are unfortunately closed as far as gyms and yoga studios. But I know that a lot of us are working with the province at this point to try to see if we can reverse some of those closures. But we'll see how that pans out over the next 28 days. Hopefully, that's all that it will last. But I can guarantee that a few of us will be continuing to advocate to the province to make sure that our businesses can open up no later than 28 days. Please, please, please support our local businesses. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We